Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith. I hope everybody's enjoying their week. Hope you guys enjoyed the content that's been a little out of the box recently. Give a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Obviously, the subscriptions to the channel have been pretty good the last couple months, so I hope that continues. So what I want to talk about today is comments made recently by Dana White about getting into the boxing business in early 2025. I've been very vocal about this in the past. If you ever listen to my SiriusXM show, comes up every now and then I would have to give my opinions about it. Now, as everybody should know, I work in the boxing world full-time these days for Pro Box TV. I'm still in MMA on the side with Bellator and all that stuff. So I've had a foot in both worlds. And the fascinating thing, I'll recount a story here that happened a few years ago. SiriusXM, back when they were spending money, sent me to Pacquiao versus Thurman in Las Vegas to work for At the Fights, which was their boxing show. And so I was at press row with Jerry Cooney. We're interviewing fighters and celebrities and all kinds of stuff, and a lot of boxing journalists as well. And I remember sitting down with Dan Raphael from ESPN Boxing for years and years and years. He does his own thing now, but it's still boxing news. And this is when Dana White was, once again, every so many years, he talks about getting into the boxing business. He was talking about it then. And I asked him what he thought about that. And he goes, well, Dana White's a great promoter, and I think you do great things in boxing. And I don't remember if we had a discussion about it off camera or who I was talking to about that comment. But one of the things I said was, he's a great promoter, but he's at his own sandbox for 20 years. The idea that he gets into boxing, which is a very crowded business with much more established names, and the rules are very different, I didn't see that happening at all. And it didn't happen. Every time this has come up, I said, I don't think Dana will ever get into the boxing business. And I want to explain why. The first part, there's several parts to it. The first one is the Ali Act prevents the kinds of contracts that allow the UFC to exist in the way it's done business. Boxers have protections that mixed martial artists do not. The kinds of restrictive contracts that essentially lock fighters down for their prime in the UFC can't exist in boxing. They used to. Boxers used to just get steamrolled by these terrible contracts with these abusive managers, and the Ali Act is a federal law that kind of prevents that from happening. And so the analogy I use is, it's like if Dana White got into the boxing business, it would be like Tony Soprano getting a job as a loan officer at the bank. All right. Does Tony Soprano know a lot about interest rates and loans? And yeah, is he very good? Does he have a lot of experience? Yes. He's also used to an environment where he can do whatever he wants. And the idea that he's going to sit in an office at a bank and deal with all the paperwork and difficulties of loaning people money legally is absurd. It's the same thing for Dana White. Boxers have a lot more protections than mixed martial artists. And he's not going to be able to lock down talent. He's not going to be able to do the things that he's done in the UFC when it comes to boxing promotion. So boxers just have a legal protection that mixed martial artists don't, and Dana White's not going to be able to do anything about that. Would he want to do that? I don't think so. That's number one. Number two, as I spoke to, I believe it was once again Dan Raphael after we were done talking on air about it, I said he wouldn't be the big dog. Boxing promoters like Bob Arum, right? Like Soma Lou DiBella and all these people who have been in it forever, Eddie Hearn, they've been in this business. And in Bob Arum's case, he's been in it for, 60 years. Dana White would be a significant force. Turki Al-Sheikh right now doing great things in boxing. He would be a factor. He wouldn't be number one at all. He would be in a crowded field with a lot of really established promoters who have deeper roots in the sport. And one thing about Dana White, and it's a similar thing, with Vince McMahon, and I'll talk about the Vince McMahon documentary when I'm done watching it, the docuseries, is Dana White has, as I said to Dan Raphael, he's had his own sandbox for 20 years. The idea that he's going to get in there where there's realistic competition from other entities, why would he do that? He doesn't have that with the UFC domestically. And the only competition the UFC's really had since, pretty much its inception, Pride was as big. Pride had more money. Pride paid more money. Pride was an international promotion. It was out of Japan. So the idea that Dana White has had any domestic competition that Strikeforce or Bellator or any of the other brands that have been around PLO could realistically topple them from their mountain hasn't been a factor in my lifetime. Meaning there's been no real domestic competition for the UFC. There have been some international promotions that did well in their home countries, but nobody that was going to come to the U.S. and really compete with the UFC. So Dana White just has never had to exist in that kind of competitive promotional environment. He would have to in boxing. All these other names are more established than he is, and he would be competing for the same talent. They have the connections, they have the history, and they have the money behind them. And Dana White's not used to that. Why would he want to jump in where there are other sharks that have bigger teeth and have been around for a lot longer? It doesn't seem to make any sense to me why he would want to do that. The third one is strictly money, strictly financial. How does Dana White sit across the table from Canelo Alvarez, who can command $150 million, pay that money, and turn around and tell Alex Pereira you're getting $4 million, $3 million, $2 million for your title defense? Well, you just gave Canelo $100 million. Well, he has more leverage than you do. What do you want? That won't fly at all. As long as Dana White is exclusively in the MMA business, in the UFC, he can do whatever he wants within the parameters of that promotion. That's what he does. He's able to do that. You don't like what I'm paying? Go somewhere else. The idea, and there isn't anywhere else to go, by the way, and your contract won't let you go anywhere anyway, but the idea that he would have to sit across from boxers who can command tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for either a fight or a series of fights, and then turn around and tell mixed martial artists they can get a fraction of that. PR-wise, he could never do it. Now, once again, it's a separate business. I guess you could say, well, this is a separate thing. Fighters aren't going to take that. They're going to want boxing money. And as soon as Dana White, or Zuffa Boxing, whatever he wants to call it, starts paying out boxing money, which is an extraordinary amount of money, the idea that he could turn around and then deny mixed martial artists that kind of money, it would be a PR nightmare that he doesn't want to deal with. Why do you have to answer questions about why I'm paying this guy this and this guy that? One of the things that Dana White has successfully done is they've lobbied to basically keep the pay for mixed martial artists. They've been able to keep it secret. Ali Act prevents that for boxing. You can't. So the idea that you're now publicly going to have to pay Terrence Crawford $50 million and then justify that when you have a whole separate entity, which is the UFC, which is making you a ton of money, where they can't make that kind of money. I don't know why you would do that. I have no idea why you would do that when you don't have to. For all of those reasons, I don't think he ever gets involved in the boxing business. There are too many reasons why not. They command too much money. You have too many options. And the legal protections that are provided to boxers are just too big. They're going to stop Dana White from doing what he's capable of doing in the UFC on a daily basis quite easily. So I don't see the crowded space being attractive to Dana White at all. It might be an ego thing. I can get in here and I can do this better than these people who have been doing it for a long time. Maybe that's some kind of motivation for him. But at his heart, he's a businessman. And what it's easy to do in boxing is come in with a ton of money and a big name and say you're going to change the nature of boxing and lose a ton of money. What people don't understand about the boxing business is you have to invest heavily in fighters on the way up. You lose money on fighters on the way up. Then when they get big, you make that money back. But there are a lot of problems where a fighter you've invested a lot of money in doesn't work out and you're screwed. Dana White's business plan with the UFC doesn't work that way at all. At all. It's easy for him to do because the strength of the UFC brand is what pushes fighters forward. That's what gets eyeballs on fighters. The fighters themselves, yeah, certain fighters come in with some juice and the UFC can put them in the right fights and promote them to some degree, but the UFC brand itself is a strong entity that pulls everybody forward. It doesn't really work that way in boxing. The idea that most people, most casual boxing fans, have any idea who promotes Canelo Alvarez or who promotes Gervonta Davis or who promotes Terrence Crawford at any given time. You might know, but probably don't. You're there to watch the fighter. You don't know who promotes them necessarily. The promotional brand of the UFC is so strong in a way that other boxing brands aren't. The fact that you're promoted by Bob Arum is a great thing for your career, generally speaking, but it's not going to be the thing that's going to push you forward as you're a top rank guy, right? Or you're a Golden Boy guy, or you're Mayweather Promotions. Not really. They have to put the work in to make the fighter big. And as Dana White, after years of having his own sandbox in the UFC, going to want to do that? I don't see it. Ego is the only reason I can see him getting involved in it. And, yeah, that's always a factor. But at the end of the day, you're a businessman, and he knows he can lose a lot of money in boxing taking on these much larger promotions. I don't think he does it. I don't think there's any prayer that he does it. It's a different business. And when people bring up Turki Al-Sheikh and what he's done, throwing money at these huge cards, is he making money? Is it profitable? Articles I'm reading are saying no, that there's no way with, for example, the Terrence Crawford fight that he had in L.A. that had huge fights from start to finish. It had Eminem, it had all that it made money. There's no way. Turki Al-Sheikh has Saudi money. He doesn't. Is he out to make a profit? Probably not. It's about a commercial, essentially, for Saudi Arabia and Riyadh season. So the idea that I'm going to do what Turki Al-Sheikh did, what, you want to just take hundreds of $millions and just fling it at something and you don't really care if it works? No. That's not Dana White's MO. And when he says, boxing's a broken business, what he means is the profit margins aren't as high. And the idea that you're going to get a return on your investment, it doesn't work all the time. It doesn't. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Bob Arum famously said that he lost money on Terrence Crawford, all of Terrence Crawford's fights. I'm like, the guy's undefeated. He's the greatest pure boxer of his generation. You couldn't make money on the guy? So it's this idea that people throw money at boxing. They don't always recoup their money. And as a result, I don't see Dana White getting involved. But we'll see if he does early 2025. If he does get involved, it might be on a small scale. But the idea that he gets into the deep waters with major sharks to promote major fights with major fighters, don't see that happening. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'll talk to you again soon.